Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to Ask DeAnna Anything. We're here today with DeAnna Batdorf, who is an Ayurvedic practitioner, my body educator, lymphatic specialist, and DeAnna Essentials formulator. The DeAnna Essentials mission is a place for all people to heal, learn, and grow. We provide a community of support to empower individuals with knowledge, tools, and skills for their optimal well-being. So you're here today for Ask DeAnna Anything, where nothing is TMI for DeAnna. Thank you so much for being here, DeAnna. And I am very excited for today's topic, which is odorous natures and odorous orifices, as we've said.
I was like, we're talking about the orifices today.
So we're excited to dive into all things yeast, fungus, smells, Great. Hey. Looks like we're back on. Awesome. Well, I was wondering if you could give us a quick debrief of how hormones affect odors, and specifically how like more male or female hormones can affect odors throughout their cycles, and just like how cyclically our odors can change.
I love this question, because who really is talking about the male reproductive cycle and the fact that, no matter who you are, you have hormones cycling through your body, and they are ruling through our planetary alignment and the timing of the sun and the moon. And that keeps a flow of one hormone feeding another, which takes us through a whole journey through the month. And that, that whole menses time, for women or female identified, and, for like women or for anyone who, has a female reproductive. And I think it's an important thing to know that once we stop that, that's our cleansing time. And once we come out of that menses and out of our cleansing time, we then go into the calmest time of the month. And then we go into a really high elevated estrogen fertility relation. And then we come out of that and we go back down into this other lower space. And we either build a baby or we slough off once again every month. So we see our cycles and talk about our cycles because we see it and we experience it. So what about men? They go through the same exact cycle. We just don't see it so clearly because there's no blood let out, because there's no womb, there's no uterus. So this is the only difference. The only difference is understanding that female pattern and how we show our slough, because we have an open vessel in our reproductive. And in the male body, you don't have that response. So what do you have? What do you have to follow? You have your odors. You have your odors. And we have our hormones, and that is pheromonious, and they're enticing. And that's why when somebody, you're like, oh, I'm digging on this person, but like you get really intimate, and you're like, oh, I don't really like their smell or their taste as much. And then you're like, struggling with this, and it's that important. So our smells drive this flow. And then when this flow is imbalanced, or if your body becomes maybe a little bit more, toxic that month, maybe you consume some more things, I always think of like, when am I, a little more gluttonous, and like, when am I being really good, and just like, in my flow of moderation, there's a difference. And then when am I cleansing? And that cleansing is when you have more odor. So for men, they have this really low time right after, let's say they ended their cycle. They just went through their cleanse. Let's start it from the same place we do with female body. And then we go right into this, like, okay, there's just this little lull. Everything's kind of calm, not a lot of upheaval in your own personal feelings of you and how you're even experiencing the world. And then you go into this higher time, and fertility for men, and I've like tracked this on men's smell. I have a lot of fabulous men in my life. So, I mean, I'm able to literally be like, can I kind of
little sniff every day?
And they go very sweet. So their fertility time, as we have more cervical mucus and more juice, what we call ojas, they have more ojas too. And that ojas is very sweet and kapha. And so that's when they're like lovey-dovey, and there's this sensitivity, and there's just like a sweetness even maybe to their urine, because the thing we have to think of with men is that their male reproductive is called genitourinary tract. So their urethra runs through the penis. And so there's some odors you might want to track more. There's some overflow of hormones in everybody's urine, but it more is part of that system as a whole. So the urine will get more sweet, or even a little bit thicker. And it might even be more of a salty finish to the skin, which is kind of lovely sometimes. And that's why we're all fertile. We're all, we're like sweet and salty.
Sweet and salty.
Right? Yeah. I mean, seriously. And there is more of that. If you're not electrolyte rich, you may not get that to that salty, but that's really would show fertility. And I ask men and women when they're maybe having problems with fertility, or they're wanting to build their fertility, to build whatever their family is going to look like and what that unit is. I'm always kind of like, you're looking for sweet and salty. When you taste yourself, you're like, there's a little more fullness to the tissue. There's a little more sleep and calm. And then as soon as you go into the highest of fertility, and we're talking again for male cycles, monthly male cycles. And then when they start getting to the highest fertility, they have another kind of full testosterone depth. And that's when you want to really feed the liver if you're trying to like be fertile, and that brings on a little bit of a pungency at the end of ovulation for men. You know what I mean? High fertility, and potency of testosterone. Then there's another little lull, and there's kind of a not so much smell, not so much going on. And that might just be a couple days. And this is considered healthy cycle, is what I'm teaching. And then you hit that like really going into your cleansing, whatever hormones really moved you that month. If you didn't use them all, if they didn't all move through the lymph, because we have to remember these hormones move through the lymph system to get from one place to another. And so sometimes the lymph is not in good condition, and those hormones just don't even get delivered and shared, because, it's called an endocrine system. Our glands work together. There's 7 of them, storing and manufacturing, hormones. And so there's this lull, and then there's the sloughing of whatever didn't get released. And that's more of an acrid, pungent, sour smell. That's the kind of smell where you're like working hard, and all of a sudden you like go to, reach, you're like, oh, I don't know. And you're all
like, whoa,
whoa, baby. You're like, okay, you know what I mean? And it might even be down in the reproductive, let's like not play any games here. There's been plenty of days where it's like, I do really sweaty work. I'm like working hhard. I sweat a lot. And sometimes I, kind of like sitting around, all putting my legs out, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah. I can smell that. And then you have to kind of be like, okay, now let's just get honest about what did you smell? So there's a natural pungency and acridness that's showing very strong progesterone related, and this is for female really, so you can build tissue and build a baby, For men, that's the difference too, because they go down and they wane and they get this little lull, and then all of a sudden they have to slough some hormones, but it's not like we have a little more follow through even. We get to kind of like, yes, out, I see you, and so they have more tissue change. So they'll have a little more underarm smell, more smell in the groin. And then as they have in ejaculation or urine, because those are their two tissues that run through the system, those are going to be stronger and they're going to have a little more sourness, or maybe the fluid is a little bit more, thick and a little more yellow, versus when we're in high fertility, it's kind of like a really white creamy. So there's also tissues we can read, which, hey, everybody should go to Portugal with me, because we'll be covering this topic and you would be hanging out with us and some really great people. We have a very nice, diverse group that is formed so far. But we do have openings, and I would love to see who wants to be there with us. But we talk about all these things, every tissue, the lymph, the blood, the muscle, the skin, the bones, the nerves, the reproductive. All of these are cleansing and nourishing based, like us. Yeah. And our hormones have to get out. And so they have to get through the sweat glands, or they have to get through our liquid tissues. And so that's really what, your partner is wanting to maybe even consider, or like somebody's, partner. And then these, I do notice when I'm working with people who are doing transitioning, I'll notice all the smell relations that come up with taking in hormones that are new to your body because you're transitioning yourself. Somebody choosing to take testosterone or elevate their estrogen. And that will bring on different odors. And so I'm always like, just make sure you let them all do their job. And then you make sure that you kind of get on like, what is my monthly cycle? Let me make sure I'm cleansing these hormones out so your body can actually keep receiving more without complication. Yeah. So I just want to throw that in there too, that, it's like I've been very lucky to be able to work, in a community where people are being in their choice, and they're allowing themselves to choose what is right for them. And then they're introducing this cycle to be able to, be intentional about your goals, and your dreams, and still allowing you to be a sexually pleasure-driven person, because I find that is just like an incredibly amazing way to be healthy. And I also tell people to get off cycle. So, that's a whole nother topic on how. Usually I need to work with someone or like, something, but what if you don't want a child? You want somebody to be cleansing. I know in my partnership, it's worked really well that one of us is cleansing while one of us is fertile. So we're not matching infertility because we chose not to have children very consciously. And, and then I'm more calm and like, hey, baby, when he's cleansing. And then when I'm all, cleansing, then, he's like, hey, baby, I got you,
Yeah.
And then we're like, wow, we're way better friends when we're opposite.
Yeah.
Cleansing together is a little challenging. And you want to be aligned if you are wanting to build a baby. You want to be aligned because you want to hit that we are fertile.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, So yeah, it's the same cleansing, the same like enemas, downward motion, all of us humans, we tick in the same way as far as what we need when we need to cleanse. And if it's down here, if the odor's down here, you need to cleanse down, downward. And so enemas and purgation that activates the reproductive to release, and then there's also going to be, in that fertility time, like if you want to be fertile, you're not cleansing. And that's something I've talked to people about all the time. I'm like, okay, you like a lot of cleansing, but you're trying to build a baby. Yeah. Like you got building blocks.
You have to have that nutritive, like juicy.
It's trickier to cleanse and build blocks at the same time. Sometimes somebody needs both. You got to be strategic, but for the most part, if you want to build.
Yeah.
If you want to cleanse.
Yeah, that's such a good idea too, for like male body people can kind of replicate what's happening with menstruation and do that same kind of thing. I'm thinking like, often when I menstruate, I like poop more and sweat more. That's right. And all these things that are like, and smell more. So it's like, yeah, how do you like kind of activate more of those systems that'll allow you to, flush out whatever hormones or unnecessary toxins you still have in your body.
And keep in mind, it's always going to go back to gut because this is the seat of health. I mean, there's always going to be some gut issue or something because we eat and we consume, and then our gut is the epicenter. Like, let's just get used to like tracking it and tweaking it as we go. You're not going to find some perfect gut. And then all of a sudden they just stay there until they die. Like it just doesn't happen. It's an ebb and flow. It's a balance imbalance. So let yourself have that. And then you can be all, whoa, I really, really, really loved that Indian food. But wow, 1 or 2 days later, that really affected me. I smelled it and I, what I mean? Changed my texture, and then I have to be all, okay, that's an occasional, and I always have this thing when I go to Indian food, I love it so much. I'm like, well, let's just order many different things and then we'll have it for lunch tomorrow. And I'm like, that's not actually the best way to do it. Yeah. One meal would have been enough. It takes me over the edge. So we can start tracking ourselves and being smart. Doesn't mean I'm never going to eat Indian food. I adore it.
And everyone has their different things that they know. It's like, when I eat that specific thing, it doesn't exactly sit best with me. So
so just letting yourself smell your odors and then be honest with yourself about maybe those months when you smell more. But you're also maybe going to smell more if you're like in a new relationship or you just had some really good intimacy. You know what I mean? Or you're super excited about life or a new project. Like the more elevated you are, the more hormones are all yes. So you're like yes, and then they're like yes. And and then it's so you might have odor that stays sweeter and not so kind of sour at the end. And you could be all, that might be my, I'm excited.
Ready to attract some new energy into my life.
Spreading my love for whatever is going on in life. So there's some healthy pleasure odors too, is what I wanted to just make sure we talk about.
Yeah, that's so fun. I feel like this is a whole new portal into something new to track, like just being more curious about my smells, because usually it's just like, cover it up, put on deodorant. Like that's always how I was raised, shower. So it's just like, this is just a new curious thing to think about and know that it's affecting the way that I relate with people. And it's really it's beautiful. Wonderful. So we can dive into some of our questions. If you are interested in submitting a question, you can always do so in the chat box on YouTube, or you can do it on our website, DeAnnaessentials.com. You can scroll down to the bottom and there's a box where you can submit your questions. So today we have a question from an anonymous person who says, "Greetings. I'm writing to ask about eye health. I'm a frontlines health worker and I've been working through this pandemic. I wear PPE for long shifts and have found that throughout this pandemic, my eyes have suffered. Redness, sore, burning, itchy, chalazions, styes. It's been rough. I've tried all the Western remedies and some herbal remedies, and some medicines bring relief, but nothing works. I've been diagnosed with blepharitis and dry eye. Years ago, one of your students did netrobosty on my eyes just to practice, and it was so lovely, which is receiving ghee in your eyes. So nice. I have an intuitive hit that would be helpful for me, but I can't find a practitioner who does this practice anywhere in the Bay Area. I love my job and want to continue serving, and I'm worried about what's happening with my eyes. Help."
Okay. So, first off, I'm going to tell you a kind of a concept. So, okay, you know how we have the whole face map, and it tells us everything about our body. All of our nerve endings are in our hands, our feet, and our face. And, you know, one of the things we look at is like where something's happening tells us a lot about our body. So this is the right eye, and the right corner of the eye is the liver. And the left is spleen. And so the first thing is, and then here is where we have histamine response. And we get, you know, crow's feet, or we get like redness in the corners to the outside corners. But this is all adrenals. Under the eyes is kidney, and the eyelid is bladder. And I just got to tell you, the other one is the temporal is gallbladder. So where in your eyes you're getting coloring or the most irritation, or where the styes are coming up, like over to this side or top or bottom, you know, those things kind of just a little bit, you know, give you little details. But the thing we know is that anything in the eyes is basically residing liver, spleen. And in Ayurveda, we would call alochakpitta. Alochakpitta is eyes, and fire rises from the liver, and it has a direct relation to the liver, as does our skin. And that's why they ended up calling skin an organ in the allopathic realms. It's kind of governed now as an organ. It's so large by size. But, you know, skin is a tissue, you know, in Ayurveda, and things release out of that skin tissue because the fire is the liver is the biggest fire organ we have, and it's literally the biggest organ we have, and it's to the right, and it affects the right side to the left side. So you can even look at like, okay, more in your right eye, liver, more in your left eye, spleen. And then you also can then know that in Ayurveda, the Stye is unresolved anger, which we call resentment. And it is fire that is needing, it's being contained, and you're imploding in your fire throughout your day, perhaps, instead of breathing oxygen, which puts out a fire, you know, like cools down heat, inflammation in the body at least, and make sure the oxygen is rising to calm you down to the brain. So fire rising, and that's what Pitta mantra is, fire rising in the body, just like in a house. And so that's the first thing you want to know, is it's fire rising from the liver to the eyes. And then you have your liver and spleen, which is like anger and resentment. Okay. And it may not be that you're just angry or resentful. It might be that that's the way you even maybe perhaps dealt with things as a child, was like maybe you didn't have a lot of room to speak, or there was a lot of fire, a lot of anger and resentment in the family, and you didn't know what to do with it, you know, and so you just shoved it. We suck it in, we suck it up. And whoa, just as I said that, I'm like, how much did this person suck it in and suck it up during COVID in the realms that you're working? Like, think about how much you literally have to do that when you're in first responder time. Like, it's not even an option. It's part of how you learn to function, and it's what's needed to save the day. So my first advice is going to sound so basic, and it's okay because it's super important, and it's called breath. So we suck it in, suck it up. We go into coping. Our psoas, trauma muscle in the core, starts tightening up, and we start functioning from this tightened place, and we are getting it done. But it's actually not a natural state for our body. And so it makes lactic acid and it pulls fire to the center and it rises it up, and it shows that, there's the adrenals are fatigued and that type of thing. Some people will get the blood vessel blowouts, you know what I mean? All of a sudden they got this red streak in their eye and they're like, what?
What's happening?
So breathing while you're working any way you could possibly bring, and breathing is belly out. You're collecting oxygen all the way to the top of the head. Exhale, relax, relax, relax the body all the way down to the root chakra. Wait, don't control, no need. Again, belly expand, collect oxygen, send it to the head. Go back to, you got to meet the world, and then you get to come back to self. And then you got to meet the world, and you get to go back to self. And when I'm stressed out, I'm like, I don't want to
like, I don't want to get out there. Yeah. Let me just stay to myself, please.
Even if I'm a people person, this person's a people person. Look at the work you're doing. So you know what I mean? It's just like, and then we cross boundaries too, because we're actually tired and we've lost our breath. And then we actually don't make good decisions. It's like the worst time to schedule something.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, I really want to speak to that oxygen. Then there's just going to be tons of cooling agents. You could be chewing on mint leaves all day long. Just put them in a little jar, and you can put them in there wet and they'll stay all nice and fresh. And you literally just need to kind of expand and get that oxygen. And like, for me, mint is also child familiar. So I'm also kind of like, I chose this so that I could play in my work and I could be of use. And so I'm going to keep expanding into that. But it's an amazing cooling agent for oxygen and cooling down liver and eyes. Then we have this idea of Blepharitis, which I'm always going to be honest with everyone. We looked it up before we started this. So I didn't know what that was. So I looked it up and I'm like, oh, okay. So clogged oil ducts, which is in the conjunctivitis, upper and lower, I believe. And it can even affect the tear ducts. And then it makes, little clogs, which then could become a little cyst, which we call a stye. So we need to know a stye is a cyst. And that's probably a clogged, duct. And then that is so much fire and so much inflammation that it dries everything out and it crusts over those little pores in there. And then you end up with a lot of dry eyes. So let's just remember, knock on wood, but when there is a fire, because it's the same thing in our body, it leaves everything dry. I don't like to even talk about that anymore. I'm going to go to my other concept. When water boils for too long, it evaporates. You're left with dry. You know what I mean? I like that one better for our times. But same idea. Too much fire, there's going to be dry out. So that's what the baseline here is: cooling, nourishing. Everything you can get your hands on that is cooling, nourishing. Look at a piece of bok choy. Look at cucumber, Blue cypress would be the go-to essential oil for this, being that it also calms down the adrenals. And blue cypress, you're not going to put that in your eye, but blue cypress you would rub all over your ears, and you could kind of put it up on your forehead, and just be careful with your eyes. But it's like more safe as an essential oil in that region than anything else. And that could really start kind of cooling everything down and just moistening everything to kind of soften everything. And then I'm going to give you a cray recommendation that I think is going to work.
Okay, great. Bring it on. We love cray recommendations.
I'm going to tell you to gua sha your eyes. I'm going to tell you to literally even like go into your conjuncti and gua sha and just come on, like let's all know that we are not going to make ourselves blind if we try some things. And we can do some education and research to make sure we don't. But, just don't poke yourself in the eye. Don't use a sharp object as a gua sha. And even maybe think of your finger as a gua sha if you want to start there. And I want you to kind of find those little lumpies. You're going to feel these little lumpy lumps. And I'm going to be really honest. Look, Abby, I have one.
You got a Stye?
No, I have a
It's like a little bump.
I have a pore that has oil. Do you see it right there?
Mm-hmm. Is that something that you always have, or just
Yes,
right
I've had it for years, and I
Mm.
used to have more, and I used to get really bad styes. I had to deal with some anger stuff, and that's just part of my pitta, so that's part of me. But I also started like, it's the one I haven't been able to get rid of. But I had more, and I got rid of them. And then I started putting castor oil, a drop of castor oil in my eye every night, which is where I came up with that idea. I was reading Edgar Casey. Got to give him total credit for, all of his research and time on castor oil bean. But I started saying, no, I'm allowed to put castor in here, and people have been doing it forever. And castor breaks up, particles. I mean, that's how you can do a castor pack, and it makes you poop. You didn't put it in your colon, but it got there. How did that work? Because it goes in and infiltrates the tissue and breaks up stuff that's clogged. So I think that's right there is a routine. You could gua sha and find where those lumps are, and you start softening them and loosening up. Take control of your eyes. I think you can do this. Get some blue cypress and be gentle where you put it, and just start getting that like core, nutritive, cooling nutritive. Start eating cold and wet foods. The only other thing that I read in here that made me go, is like, hello, you could maybe, I'm so sorry, but you could have an allergy of something you adore, which means it's daily. And you might be allergic to it. So that would be the bad news. Like somebody who's like, oh my God, it's my new cat. I'm like, I can't tell you to get rid of your cat. I'm a total animal person. Like I could never do that. You know what I mean? But it's like, well, then now what do we do? And then it's a whole nother picture of like, how do we help you live with that allergen, which is still liver. That is the liver's job. It takes proteins and it converts them. And if it can't, it releases a hormone called histamine. And it gives you a response telling you that it's having a hard time breaking down that protein molecule. So you could have something you love that you're allergic to. Like it could be dairy and you just got to stop for 10-day challenge, some allergens. Maybe look at a elimination diet, but maybe don't eliminate everything because it gets a little crazy. Maybe you could see a little change and then see, but big ones with oily, because you have a situation that's a clogged oil duct. So we have to think oily. So eggs, dairy, nuts. Those are going to be the three I would say to take out for 10 days and see if it changes anything. And remember to breathe. It's more important with the situation, because then it's not just upward fire. You're in control of your fire. So if we don't use our fire and kind of control the cooling agents of the fire, we can't just burn the candle at both ends. It's like not controlling the fire. That's why pitta is actually fire and water, because things assimilate with fire and then they turn to liquid and then we absorb them. And that's pitta's job, assimilation, absorption. So it's the conversion of something from matter to liquid. And that is like, whoa, like it doesn't even stand alone in our Ayurveda. It's paired with water because that's where it's safe and functional.
Wow. I love that so much. Just thinking about how much our worlds could really benefit from thinking about our pitta as like assimilation and turning that like intensity into water, because that's such a global, especially in the US and our very activity, consumerist, capitalist based system that's so like pitta fire, but like turning that then into the water.
Yeah. And thinking about that in the forms of fuel.
Totally.
Interesting. And it's our fuel, just like it's, Earth's fuel. We are so mimic. I mean, we're just such a perfect, we're actually such an amazing map. I'm just all about like, how do we learn to read the map? So the Portugal clinical course is about really having like diagnostic tools to read that map and to even maybe develop a practice, or maybe you want to be a practitioner to your whole family. Take a 24-day trip. You can go home and take care of your whole entire family.
Yeah.
That's literally what some people do with this course.
And trust me,
Because
people will
it's like
start calling you.
Yeah, it's like just, like whatever comes up, man, it's right there. The book is hefty. It sets you up. But I also have the body mapping class, which I'll be teaching at Gathering Time. Starts December 5th. No, November 5th. Right when I return from Portugal, I start body mapping. And that's where I kind of talk about a lot of the fundamentals, and I touch on some very important things. So if that, whole program's a bit much for you, it's broken down into like public health and how can you just track yourself, body mapping, my body mapping, and it's your body and you have the right to map it and figure it out and try things. And we always try the opposite. So in this question, we got to do the opposite of hot and dry.
Brilliant. And we'll make sure to put that link on the show notes so that you can go and check out all the amazing different courses that are coming up, including aromatherapeutics, and then the Ayurveda in Portugal course, this My Body Mapping course. And then in the next, I guess, winter, springtime, we'll be having lots of different massage and body work and cranial work, all sorts of amazing body touch.
I'm focusing on the hands-on from January through March. You can see what I'm doing, a 3-day weekend each month. And yes, aromatherapeutics is in 2 weeks. I'm so excited. I have been missing this class through COVID. I haven't taught it. So I'm like, talk about juicy. I'm feeling very fertile in my formulations. Because that's what really my students who called for this class, my primary students at the moment, called for this class. And I was just very honored. I was like, there's no place you can learn aromatherapy now. And they were like, not like you're doing. So elemental formulations, elemental blending, there's some Ayurvedic blending formats that I cover that are quite interesting. And we're doing a distillation. So you'll see the distillation process live in person, and we can really see how does plant transform into an essential oil and into a hydrosol, water.
Talking about turning matter into water.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Through fire.
Yes. So yeah, you can sign up for that at gatheringtime.com. They're the ones doing the registration. But I hope you join me for any of these things. I'm back to teaching. Woo! I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So we have some more fungus questions, and I'm really excited to dive into these. So Joyce is asking, I'm so grateful for your podcast and willingness to share your knowledge. Thank you. I'm a 58-year-old working person and spend a lot of time on my computer for work. I've noticed over the years I've had ridges on my nails, particularly my thumb and ring finger. They are also a bit dull and brown. I don't tend to wear nail polish unless it's a light color. Is this the result of a nutritional deficiency that I can address or some other cause? And then there's also a question about toenail fungus. So it's possible they're connected. So I might just go ahead and read that, but it seems.
Let's do one and then I'll lead into the other.
Perfect.
Okay, so when we use our nails as a diagnostic, and they are one of the vigilance, it's one of the forms of diagnostic tools that we have in examination. So nails are a big deal in Ayurveda, and they do tell us things. So whenever we have lines that are going parallel to our fingers, we know that, and they can be little striations or they can have some irregularities, but that's usually telling you about your vitamins and your minerals and the way that you made the byproduct of your bones. So bottom line, our nails, our hair, our teeth are byproduct of our bone health, one of the 7 tissues in the body. And so I would wonder for this person about bone health and just consideration in that. And then that would be something bigger, and that would be like, bones are a deep tissue. So that'd be a long-term picture if it's a match. But if they're not, and that would be, deficiency, like you might be a little too deficient to be able to liquefy and turn those vitamins and minerals. And so they start making striations. But the nails we're talking about here, those are more common. So I mentioned them first. We're talking about horizontal, right?
There's two different. So then another person is also asking about horizontal lines that may have some fungus. But let's see, this one in particular is ridges. I guess they just say, I think that they're long ways. I think.
Okay, so if this is in a parallel to your finger, then you're looking at vitamins and minerals. And where I would start with that is a bottom line thing. Oh gosh, we're going back to salt. I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry. Wait a minute. But anyway, we are. Because if you're having a hard time absorbing vitamins and minerals, you need what's called essential electrolytes to break them down. So like you could be taking calcium, you could be taking a whole bunch of vitamin and mineral supplements, or you could be taking calcium for your bones. And you may not be absorbing and digesting it all, and again, converting it to liquid. And so it starts building up and changing the way we structure our hair, our bones, and our teeth, and our nails and our teeth from our bones. Okay. So you got to have some magnesium, which is one of the like primary builders and the liquefaction of like every other, vitamin, mineral. But you really need potassium, magnesium, chloride, sodium, essential electrolytes. You get all of them in a gray salt. And that's why I'm obsessed with Atlantic gray salt, because it's the precursor for me to get all my vitamins and minerals from what I eat, because that's my main medicine, and make sure I'm converting it. And I have the liquefaction and the electromagnetic spark to ignite and convert my fibers to liquid. So that would be the building block. Then you have about absorbing more of those vitamins and minerals, which are our omega oils. And if I had those ridges, I would probably go with a fish oil, unless you're vegetarian. And then I would go with evening primrose, because those are two a little bit more heavy hitters in the bone health relation. So they're going to be specific to bone, which is going to make an impact on your nails and your hair and your teeth. So you're going to be at probably like 6,000 milligrams a day. And I'm still going to say, put pumpkin oil on your food, eat a bunch of tahini, great for bones, great for nails, eat a bunch of raw olive oil, just don't cook those oils, put them on top of your food or turn them into a salad dressing, or something of that sort, a sauce that you put on top of your food when it's done cooking. But you need to be able to assimilate and absorb to get vitamins and minerals to form in a way that makes a smooth nail. So you can tell that there's like calcium that isn't getting broken down, and there's some zinc that isn't getting broken down. And sometimes there's more potassium than magnesium. And that's a little tricky because magnesium is like the leader in this picture of breakdown. So
that's great to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So then let's move on down to, actually, first, maybe we could talk about the other person's thumbnails, which are brown and kind of bumpy and having these more like long, or not long ways, but like horizontal lines that have this kind of like undergrowth feeling.
Okay.
A little cavernous.
Okay. Really actually kind of common. And a lot of people will see that on maybe their toes, and they'll be able to just call it toe fungus right away. But we don't think about the fact that we can get fungus under our nail, and then that can happen. So the most common reason for one finger to have that is going to be that there's a fungus under there. And that is a yeast related fungus. So I treat toe and nail fungus in general the same way we treat yeast. And sometimes you can even kind of do a little digging in there and give it a little smell, and like another odorous nature. Yeast has that kind of sweet and sour, kind of smell like yeast, like bread yeast. So that's going to be the most common thing that I'm going to see with that, especially with the brown. That's a like giveaway to like, I think that's a fungal. What I would be doing I would be doing like some bergamot and some Himalayan cedarwood. And if you just got, you just did like 5 drops of bergamot, 5 drops of cedarwood, you put it right in your palm together. Those are both really valuable plants to have around. And then you would just take it, you would keep putting it on your, you'd put it on your thumb, and you do it on both of your thumbs, and, maybe down onto your thumb itself, and just kind of get it in that region. But, those are going to go right in and start killing that fungus off. Those are both really good antifungals that are safe enough for me to mention to a broad audience. We are using a lot of antifungals that to me are not safe for a broad audience. That I hear just just like oregano, tea tree. I'm like, oh my God, those are so hot and dry. That could way like affect your kidneys if you're already depleted. And they're too like boom, and they, don't really get it done, and they're a little too hot and dry. So yeah, I would start with that being a fungal. I am going to give a little mention to something else that could show up that is in that kind of wavy, irregular, that runs horizontal, shows up on the thumbs. The thumbs are lungs. Thumbs up to lungs. That's what I do. I do all kinds of funny things to learn the meridians.
The mnemonic devices.
Like, this is colon, small intestine, baby. Come to Portugal. But this is lungs, and lung is grief, but it is this whole line that runs all the way up into the nose. And we want to think about like something that might be in the blood or changing the blood flow. And unfortunately, the only other thing I have to mention is you can get those, not usually the colors there, and they show that like there's worms, where I might have to see about pinworms or a tapeworm. These things happen to people. So I have to be honest, and you want to get that out of your body if that's true. So I don't want to scare you or anything, or maybe amoeba and sometimes parasite. So a microbe beyond just a simple fungus among us, which still isn't that simple. Fungus takes a long time to get rid of, So that would be the only other thing that would maybe, have you saying, where have I traveled, or how many digestive issues do I have that have not been figured out? Or, was there a time when you gained a lot of weight or lost a lot of weight in a really short amount of time? Because that shows amoebic or parasitic, and can kind of show us there was like an onset at some point with travel or, but that would be the only other thing I'd have to mention, that like, if you looked up nails Ayurvedically, it's probably the main thing you're going to hear. It's not going to say fungal. I've kind of more related that to what does it look like on the toes, and then, that looks more like it on your thumb. It'll lead you to a microbe. So maybe not bad idea to do a stool test. I mean, we can do all those things, from online now. You don't even have to go to your doctor to do that. You can get a stool test and have it delivered and send it back and get some results. And like, do you have microbes in there? If you're feeling like, oh, that might be me, then that's what I would do.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on the fungus topic, then we can dive down to the toes. And our ongoing toe question is, okay, I also have ongoing toenail fungus that I've had on the outside edge, left side of the right foot, on my big toe for years. The nail is strong, but it has a white discoloration on it. I've tried tea tree oil blend and a paint-on drug from the dermatologist, but neither have gotten at the root of it. Any ideas?
Okay, well, like I said, fungus among us can be very, very sticky and stubborn. So it can be really hard to get rid of. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of the things I've seen that just really kind of turn it over onto another, place. And the other thing is some people, it'll like look a little better. So they'll stop doing what they're doing. And then it just comes back with moisture. So it's going to be a certain follow through in this process too. But yeah, it can be very stubborn and that's a bummer thing. But these are the things I've seen work. First, you got that bergamot and the Himalayan cedarwood. Those are the ones that are safe enough for you to really do. And then there's a couple other things I do with long term. That fungus starts affecting your nerve endings. So I also like people to do an extra 5 drops of palmarosa. And I have that. It's brilliant for nerve regulation and calming down the nerves. And making sure you don't have like something that's provoking an immune response that's kind of keeping that active. So I add the palmarosa, and then I have people soak, and this could be for the thumb too if it is fungal. I have people soak in kalinamak, black sulfur salt, which I have online, and you can also get it at Rosemary's Garden at this point in Sebastopol. But yeah, you want to think about getting some kalinamak salt. And you take a tablespoon, you put it in a foot bath, just shallow. So you make the most concentrated, where you can kind of even just put your toes. It's nice to soak your whole foot, but it's not going to be as concentrated for your toe fungus. So you can even kind of put it in a little, little cup thing, and you're just like, oh, and like you really concentrate it. You could also sprinkle it on your feet. That sulfur doesn't last forever, but like you could sprinkle it on your feet and kind of rub it in and just kind of leave it like a dry salt scrub and just keep adding it, because you can't overdo kalinamak. It's more about making it happen. How can you soak every night, and then the other one, interesting enough, is called GSE. It's grapefruit seed extract. It is laboratory made, so it's kind of one of those in between worlds for me. It's not like right out of nature, but it's also of nature. So it's a midway, and you get the concentrate. It's by a company called Biotic. It's in every health food store around, and you start putting just 1 drop every morning, every night, like after you soak. So you soak your feet, and then you put that drop of GSE, and then do your essential oils at a different time. Maybe do those like after breakfast or midday, but when doesn't matter. Just separate it from and that would be a whole protocol. I just gave you like a lovely 3-prong protocol, which I write out for people all the time, because you are not alone and there is a lot of foot fungus in the world.
A lot of foot fungus out there.
So those are some of my favorites, and let's just see if that kind of, and due diligence. That is a biggie with it. Like you kind of can't take a week off. Like you got to stay at it, which is kind of the biggest part of it. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll knock out that fungus in no time. And okay, great. So we have one more question. It looks like there's also a question in the comments about where in India you might be teaching next year. I don't know if we're releasing that information yet to the world.
This?
So it looks like it's DeAnna.
That
might have to come on a future stream.
Yeah. Okay, so I am planning a trip. You're outing me right now. No, many people know. I just haven't done any promotion, and I'm not there yet. I'd like to focus on what I'm doing at this moment for now. But July is kind of the month I'm sitting with, and I'm working for next year. Yeah, and I will be taking a group of students over, and we'll be doing an India tour. It'll be different than the Portugal clinical, so it won't be me teaching my entire clinical course, I don't think. But I'm still sitting with, is that true or not? So, hey, we could even why don't y'all contact Abby at info@DeAnna Essentials and be like, I'm interested. And do you want my 24-day course clinical? And then we do a little travel, or what I usually do in India is I'm just introducing you to other teachers, and we just have like a little topic. So it's not as much of that full on flow. It's more like my students who have already taken my course And then we're going to now get different perspectives. So you learn Samkhya philosophy for me, and then you go and have Dr. Gupta teach you Samkhya philosophy. You learn the Dhatu tissues from me, and then, you know, we have Vijith, Dr. Vijith, maybe, do that. So usually it's a paralleling of what I've already taught. So we're really getting it from somebody, who lives in India and has generationally grown up with India. And they have a different or maybe more traditional or definitely more classical representation than me, because I'm more modern, user friendly Ayurveda. That's just more what's true to me. And it's, so I love taking people over and like giving homage and respectfully being a student with my students and listening to these beautiful, Indian doctors and masters that, it's in their blood, it's their bloodline, So I thought about teaching my 24-day clinical there. I'm probably going to do some co-teaching with Dr. Gupta, but other than that, I don't think I'm doing the full program there. That'll be in September next year. And I'll do it right here back in Occidental at my home.
September will be the clinical Ayurvedic.
Yes, that's what I'm working on. India, July, and Sonoma County, September.
So much to look forward to.
And there's a little, sitting with a few more other little places outside of the country from there. So
awesome. And if you're looking for things that are coming up locally here, a couple more awesome opportunities are that we're having a dog clinic August 24th. And so if you have a pup that you want to bring in, we have that. And then we also have community clinics really kicking up in November, December. Yep. So if you are looking for some hands-on care from DeAnna and her students who have taken the clinical herbalism courses before, that is just going to be an amazing way to get to receive that hands-on care in a way that's affordable and is really sweet. I always love those.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah, the dog clinic, I'll just do another shout out, little bark out. But yeah, I have not only my kind of intuitive and my love of communications with all things living. And so that could be dogs too. I'll do pulse and I'll do some intuitive work. And then I just want to say, we also have Larissa, who is amazing. Let's be realistic and let's be smart about just you don't have to listen to me to understand things. You can track your history and you can also kind of be like, okay, the smell's coming down from my root chakra. So that is about my reproductive. You don't have to freak out, but it's something is reproductively needing some flush, so there's penial douching and there's also vaginal douching. There's things you can do. If it's armpits, you really want to think more about adrenaline and cortisol levels and also toxicity buildup in the gut. So I think of both my adrenal stress and my gut relation. And think about it, when we have stress, we have digestive issues because we eat our emotions. We eat our stress. It's natural. It happens. go in there and massage and see if there's pockets and pump them and break them down, just like I've taught you to do with your lymph. There's lymph in the mouth. It might be stuck up here in the lymph nodes across the jawline. You know, if you're having some smell in your ears, you need to know that there's like a low-grade ear infection going on in your ears. You might have some yeast in there, and that might be part of the picture, but usually it's a low-grade infection. So like really be honest about where that odor is, tells you what's going on. And instead of us kind of being like, it's like, just face it and start working on it. And you'll be amazed at how much it changes. And then you'll know you're better. And then it gets really empowering.
Yes.
So,
well, this has been so inspiring. I'm just like ready to go smell everything and think about my hormones and smell other people. Yeah, it just brings a whole new perspective to smell, that it's another health way to understand our health and understand our bodies and who we are. And it's about embracing our smells.
Yeah. Imagine panchakarma or body work. It's like, you're totally working with people's odors, So I don't hear enough people talking about it, or, it's kind of like, I'm just going to act like I don't smell that in your armpit. It's like, I'm usually like, oh, I smell your armpit. Like, oh, let's talk about what that means to you, like, like totally. What's the big deal? And I'm still going to go in there and get my hands on it and move it around and, put some essential oil on there. I'm like, let's keep going.
Yes.
We got to like stop having shame around everything. So no shame on your odor, but your odor is speaking to you, and you can do something about it and really be empowered. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much. And thank you, DeAnna. We'll see you all in 2 weeks for another Ask DeAnna Anything. Make sure to submit your questions on our website.